Welcome to the Thriving Tides podcast. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Julianne. If you're an entrepreneur or busy individual looking for self-care ideas, you're in the right place.
And we can't wait to share our experiences with you.
All right.
Welcome back to the closet.
Yes.
Today, we're talking about a topic that I think it's going to be really interesting because I don't want it to be super serious, but how is it not to be able to talk seriously about ego?
Well, I think it can be serious, and I'm sure we'll have some laughs and some giggles too.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. No, we will. We always do.
Yeah.
No matter how serious the topic, we find some sort of comic relief. But yeah, we're going to talk about ego and how it can get in the way of many, many things.
Yeah.
What it's like to deal with someone who has an ego. How do you recognize if you have one yourself? What can you do about it? All the things.
I'm super excited because this is like kind of in your field too. You talk a lot about that with like leadership and stuff like that. So I'm sure I'll be the one listening this episode and being...
The tables have turned.
The tables have turned.
Yeah, tons of leaders and people may have egos or ways that their ego is getting in the way and they don't even see it. So when my coaching comes into play, it's a lot about starting with self-awareness and recognizing how we're showing up and how we're being with what's occurring. And are we coming at it from a place of, wanting to learn and dive right in? Or is that ego coming in and being like, I already know what the answer is, or I don't have time for this. And yeah, there's just a lot of different ways that it can show up.
Totally. Mm-hmm. So I think we all kind of know what ego is, but how would you describe ego?
It's a good question. Usually we have a definition sitting in front of us. We're changing it up this time.
I was going to say, yeah, we're going a little loose on this one.
We're going rogue. I think a lot of people will interpret it differently. So I guess I'll give kind of my thoughts and you can tell me where you're at with it too. But I see someone with a big ego, not always as a bad thing, but it's a bad thing when it starts getting in the way of being effective. So there are times where maybe you have to lean on that ego to be a little more confident to get you through something that's scary or that you're nervous about. But then there's times where if you're flexing it a little too strongly in the wrong situation, you're seen as maybe arrogant or unrelatable or someone that, is just on their high horse, as you might say, who doesn't have time to really roll up their sleeves and get the work done or meet the common folk down here, right?
Interesting.
Yeah.
I feel like that's what I would classify as an ego. I always think of the ego as my inner criticizing voice to myself. I feel like everyone has a different kind of ego.
Yeah.
My ego's name is Jessica. Sorry to all the Jessicas out there. There's literally
At
no...
least you didn't say Susan or Karen.
Yeah, no, there's no hate, no shade, but everyone used to always call me Jessica, and I feel like that's just my alter ego of yeah. So
really?
I think so sometimes I would call myself out and be like, is this Jessica? Is this actually you, Steph, or is this Jessica trying to put you down?
And so this is not a way that you're behaving, but it's the voice in your head. That's Jessica's in your head. Yeah.
So I had actually again, because I do have depression and I do have high functioning anxiety, I have done a lot of research and talked to a lot of people, and a lot of people say that sometimes the ego is what people hear when they're doubting themselves and stuff. And that's my biggest thing is I'm constantly worrying about the next step, and that's usually your ego being I want to warn you about this.
Interesting.
And so that's what I've always kind of thought ego was. So I kind of think that that's a more rounded definition that you gave.
Yeah. Well, and I think maybe there's the inner ego and the outer ego.
Maybe. Okay.
Right. So when you're talking about your alter ego of that voice that's inside of you that, maybe it's when you're ready to level up and it's telling you you're not ready and you should play small and no one's ever going to support you or, Yeah,
Jessica talks a lot. She's a chatty Cathy.
The look you Jessica just gave me was How do you know what's going on in my head? Where outwardly, or your external ego could be that, you know, someone else is seeing the Jessica come out in you, right? Where you're seemingly overconfident or not connecting with others because you think you've just got it, or, you know, you don't need to learn or ask questions. I'm sure you've had, well, I know you've told me about different people back when you worked at like Startup Zone, especially. You saw so many different folks, and they'd just be like, yeah, yeah, okay, whatever, you know, as you're trying to educate them and share your expertise with them, but they just didn't even have the time of day for it.
Yeah.
So I see that as someone who, you know, thinks highly of themselves or doesn't believe that they have anything to learn in that situation, and maybe their ego is taking over.
That's a really interesting. And I kind of wonder, like, as females too, if we don't show our outer egos as often, because then we get labeled as a bitch or something like that. You know, I
So sassy.
yeah, like I don't think I let my outer ego show that much. Outer ego. But like my inner ego is like I said, Jessica talks a lot. She can just
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's if I relate it back to the stages of like adult development, because that's a lot of what the foundation of conscious leadership is on too. When you're like a teenager or even like younger, you're egotistical, like you're egocentric.
Yeah.
Because you're all about me,
Yeah.
my needs. How do my needs get met? I'll connect with you only if you can serve what I'm trying to get. I don't really care how it impacts you. I just need this, and I want this, and I want it now. So we know teenagers. We know that that's what they're like. Some adults get stuck there and never grow beyond it.
Oh, okay.
Not very many. Probably only like 5%, they say. They say. But the level above egocentric is reactive, and that's still not the greatest place to be. However, about 80% of us get stuck there.
Really?
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah. And the two I find very connected, because it's that like reaction of like, how am I protecting myself? And when you think of your safety, your worth, your identity, I mean, all of that can get piled up into your ego as well. And you might have reactive tendencies that are keeping you what you feel is safe. So you have these knee-jerk reactions to different things that are happening, and that's getting in the way of either you getting results and achieving things in your business or building strong connections and relationships with other people. There's a lot of different ways that could just kind of cut you off.
Interesting. It kind of makes sense that there's a lot of people that are affected by, like, even our poll today. Only one person said that they don't think that they're affected by their ego. And so that, 90% or something like that, 99% said that they do find that their ego does get in the way. And most of them were also entrepreneurs too. And so when you factor in like having an ego with entrepreneurship, like,
yeah, it's interesting because I think we have to have somewhat of an ego to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I guess, hey?
Because if you can't put yourself out there, you're not going to be successful.
Interesting.
But it's, are we making ego bad?
Right. Yeah, because when you think of
it?
ego, I always think of it in like that it's a negative thing. Like, I don't think it's a positive thing to have an ego. But I guess, yeah, there's you almost have to have that will. It's almost like I don't even know where I'm going with that. Like a willpower almost. Like, yeah, you have to have that drive. And that, like, yeah, I can do this because, especially for entrepreneurship, because there are a lot of setbacks and stuff.
So many. Yeah, and so sometimes we actually need to boost our ego because our self-esteem, maybe we get beat up or we're internally beating ourselves up because
Yeah.
things aren't going, you know, our Jessicas are getting too loud and you need to boost up your ego a little bit to be able to put yourself out there.
Interesting.
So I like most things, I don't like to label anything in my coaching as good or bad. Like even if you remember from the mini course with being above or below the line, one is not better than the other.
True.
The most important thing is knowing where you are.
Interesting.
And so with your ego, if you can just recognize it and see where is it helping you and where is it getting in your way.
Oh, it gets in the way all the time.
All day long.
All the time.
And then what can you do about it, right? When you start
Yeah.
to recognize it. Because a voice like that that's running through your head all the time becomes very familiar.
Mm.
And it's really hard to shut it down.
Interesting. So, what do we do then with ego, Julianne? Like, where do we even start? Because I feel like I have kind of a understanding of what ego is, but like, where do we start with this? Like, how do we rein it in? What is it? How do we use it for leadership? Like, what do we do, Julianne?
What do we do?
What are we doing?
It's funny. I feel like the tables have turned because that's almost like the same question I asked you when we did our content marketing episode.
It depends.
Like, so, yeah. Throw that back in your face.
Yeah. We need to make merch with it depends. Oh my goodness.
Right. This is a sidebar, give a shout out to Angela Champ. She was the VP of HR when I started at Intact in Calgary. She's with a different company now. But she wrote a book called It Depends.
Oh my goodness.
And it's
that's
about
amazing.
HR practices. So
Perfect.
way to go,
title.
Angela.
Yeah.
You're awesome. But I think of her every time I say that.
We'll send you a shirt.
Yeah. Or maybe she has some.
Yeah.
We're not copying you.
Yeah,
I
we're not
promise.
copying you, I swear.
But it does, because it does depend. We all grow up, I feel like I'm getting deep, and all the things that we experience create our underlying belief system and the assumptions that we have about what makes us good, what makes us safe, what makes us worthy. So depending on how you grew up and what experiences you've had, that's going to relate to your self-esteem and your ego and how you show up. I've been doing a lot of the leadership circle profile stuff lately, so I'm like all up in this right now, which is really exciting. And while I did say the reactive stage is the step above ego, it's still very connected in many ways. And so if you're the type of person who grew up in a home that maybe had a bit of friction or, you know, fighting, whatever it might be, and you decided you were going to be the funny one. So you're telling jokes at the dinner table so that mom and dad get along, or you're the class clown at school, you know, different things like that. And you're like, and people laugh.
Yeah.
And that makes you feel really good. And you're like, oh, okay. So all I got to do to get people to like me is to tell a joke.
Interesting. So if like whenever people were like, "Oh, you're so creative and I love your art, it makes me so happy," I chose that to do that. Is that what you mean?
Well, you felt a sense of connection probably from that.
Okay.
But you might be looked at, well, it's funny, I'm about to say you're controlling. You know you're controlling.
I'm shaking my head in agreement for those listening.
Yes. Those who are controlling really identify with their achievements. So if you were always told like, oh, wow, look at that beautiful thing that you made, and that's what made you feel really worthy and connected, then that is what you're always going to lean on until you recognize otherwise. And that can be good to a certain point. Like, obviously, you're an entrepreneur. You need to get things done. You need to be in control a good amount of the time.
Yeah.
But if you're doing it to the point that, let's say you're leading a team and you don't trust any of them to be doing it, so you're not collaborating with them, you're not mentoring them or helping them develop because you're like, no, this is my achievement.
Okay.
then that's going to start getting in the way.
And that's that
where
ego
that ego's
coming
coming in and saying, like, this is what I'm identifying as. But what you're really doing is making it that much more work for you, because you have this team who wants to do the work, who wants the autonomy to be able to do it without you towering over them or micromanaging every step of the way.
Mm-hmm.
But because you're so set on that achievement being what defines you, you can't let go.
Interesting.
And then that can start to really just take you in many different directions. And you could still be very successful, but you're probably also very exhausted.
Yeah. Interesting.
So that's the controlling one. The one with like making people laugh and, you know, being funny, or the person that like brings everyone together and gives everyone a voice. That's what we would call a complying leader.
Okay.
These are the people who can't make a decision or can't get things done because they're worried they're going to upset someone. And we know that there's no way to keep everyone happy or for everyone to get exactly what they want, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you start, if you're running your own business on your own, or if you're leading a team or in a large organization, or even with your group of friends, right? Like, where are we going to go for supper tonight? If everybody gets a choice, everybody gets a voice, then... And you can't decide because you're scared, well, I want to go there, but, oh, Stephanie's vegetarian, so I can't go there because there's no, you know, like, there's so many different things. You're the worst.
I'm the worst.
But that can start getting in the way. But a certain amount of that from a leader or from an entrepreneur is great because you don't want them to be so like, I don't care what anybody thinks, or I don't care about my relationships. You just got to find where is the best amount for you, depending on what the situation is and what you're trying to achieve. How much do you let that really take over?
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. There's a third.
Of course.
Protecting is another one. I'm going to back up for a second. So I said controlling was all about your achievements. Complying is about your relationships. So you define yourself by the relationships that you have. And you don't want to rock the boat, because if those relationships are gone, then you feel lost or unworthy. And then the protecting is I am my ideas. So it's a lot about your intellect. Okay. And that can make people seem, this is where ego, I think, will come in a lot, because one of the containers under that actually is arrogance.
Oh, okay.
So how arrogant are you as a leader? Or how distant or critical? Those are the three key things that are under protecting. And so if you come across as like, all my ideas are the best ideas, and I'm just going to sit in this meeting and not even really listen to what anyone else is saying, and I'm just going to throw, like, this is what I want to do. There's people out there like that. You're smiling at me.
When I used to work in corporate.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Lots of them.
Oh,
right?
yeah. They're the bulldozers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like a bull in a china shop, right?
Yeah.
And they just, like, barrel it all down. And all that matters is that they're standing at the end and that their ideas are getting chosen.
That's a tough one.
And you probably don't know very much about those people.
No.
Right? They're not asking you what you did on the weekend or what your spouse's name is or your fur babies or anything. They're very, very distant, and they'll poke holes in things. So that's the whole, all like, these are my ideas. And if I'm seen as smart and if I'm seen as in control, then I'm worthy and I'm awesome. That to a certain extent can be good in some places, right? So devil's advocate can be great. Someone who can, make sure if you're making a huge decision or a big investment, to have someone have that critical eye and make sure that it is the right thing to be doing, or at least close enough. But that's like the holistic view, right? Can they be critical or distant enough, like emotionally distant enough from a decision to make it the right one, without getting in the way or without it needing to be whatever their core idea was. Yeah. So all of these things can be good, but when it's like so strong, it's really like, who wants to work with those people?
Yeah.
Nobody.
I was going to say, and even if you're the entrepreneur, the person leading, like no one wants to then work with you, you
Yeah.
know, and unfortunately things do travel around fast. You're going to have a harder time probably finding employees that are going to want to put up with that, you know.
Or clients.
Or clients, yeah, that too.
Yeah.
Although I feel like some, like if for a service-based business, for example, I feel like some people are okay with people doing that. But yeah, I guess in a way too, it's still not good for people like me that would probably be like,
I don't know. Yeah, like, I mean, with your clients, right? Like if you are so focused on complying in your relationships and you're like terrified that you're going to upset a client, then are you going to take the risk? Or, you know, like let's say you're building a website for somebody and you just want to listen to all their ideas, and then you want to implement them all, even though you know that some of them aren't going to work, but you're worried to say that because, you know, like there's a lot of different ways that can get in the way. But if you can have the right amount of your ego or your self-esteem where you can step in as that voice of authority because you're the expert, then you're doing a great service to your client.
Right. Ooh.
I feel like I'm just like talking at you.
Hey, no, I'm just absorbing it right now. I'm just trying to like think of also like myself and applying these kinds of scenarios too, because I'm sure there are. So can anyone be any type of these types then? So,
yeah,
because I'm seeing like myself in like that relationship thing, especially with my clients. Like, like for example, I'm doing a logo right now, and I know it's going to be too much. But their heart is set on it, and like they really, really want it. But it's like I want to preserve my client relationship. At the same time, it's like I'm trying to be like, it'll not look good on a business card. Like we should probably,
right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's so tricky because sometimes you just kind of have to bite the bullet, especially as a creative person. I don't really know if that makes a difference in that, but like I do think like. Going back to like going below the line, I then say, why don't they just trust me? And my ego is like, oh, you suck, Steph, if you couldn't give something, you know, I don't know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, and the ego is like so strong below the line.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like it's just like you will listen to me and you are terrible or this isn't going to happen, and it's a scary place to be.
And a quick refresher for those who may have missed that
like,
episode, what's below the line mean?
So in conscious leadership, the very, very first thing we teach anybody is a simple solid line. If you're watching our YouTube, you can see our line with our hands. Yeah. So cool. If you are below the line, you are in a state of threat. So you want to be right about everything. You're very closed off and serious, and it's just you're constricted and kind of like almost like pushing away from things, I might say. Yeah. And when you're above the line, you're coming from trust. So you're open, you're committed to learning. You could be a little more playful, and things just are much easier above the line. Although we are below the line a lot of the time. And so when we are feeling threatened, that's when that voice, the Jessica, shows up in our head and says, oh, you really shouldn't do this, or no one's going to like it, or, you know, like all those things can happen because we're in that state of threat, and it's that fight, flight, and freeze starts taking over, right? Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, and again, Jessicas that are possibly listening, this is literally no tea, no shade, with peace and love. Like,
I feel like you are in your like. I'm reading you right now. I want you to do this assessment, but this is like your complyingness, right? Like you're worried
that there's a Jessica that's mad listening.
Because belonging is one of the key elements under complying, and I feel like you're worried that Jessicas are feeling. A little pushed off or cast off because we're naming her. So I just had to say that.
Well, I actually am like kind of worried that like there's a Jessica listening, and again, like it's just because people used to think that my name was Jessica, so I'm like, this is just my new alter ego.
Well, like all the Susans and the Karens get a bad rap too, right? So we're just spreading it out.
I know so many really nice Karens. So
Me
you
too.
Karens, you know,
yeah, and Susans too.
And Susans. Oh, see, I don't know much about that one, but. Is Susan a Karen?
Yeah, like
okay,
you know, I think it's a different
kind of,
but it's
Okay.
I have a friend Sue, and I send her the Susan one sometimes, and we laugh. I'm like, this isn't you at all.
I'm gonna send it to you.
Yeah. Because it's silly. Yeah.
Oh man.
But I'm sure we all like, and I love that you have your alter ego named. I think everyone should do that.
Well, it's easier to be like, I ever wrote this down in the notes. It's like when your ego is in charge, it's only telling you half the story. So I'm trying to say like, what is she trying to manipulate me? Like what's going on? Like what's she up to, that Jessica?
Yeah, or like, what am I afraid of?
Yeah.
What's really going on here? If she's speaking this loudly, is it because I'm actually in a state of threat, or is it perceived threat?
Exactly.
Because no longer are we typically in a place where we're actually in physical danger.
Yeah, because it goes
it's
back
a threat to
like,
our ego.
Yeah, it goes back to like the caveman days or whatever.
Yes. Yeah.
And we talk a little about that like on branding and like your inner brain, you know. Yeah, and that is true. Like we don't really have much to be fearful of. Well, we do have a lot to be fearful of, but like in the like day-to-day lives, we don't.
A lion's not going to come eat you.
Exactly. So like instead of worrying about that, it's kind of evolved to what, you know, freaking out about everything like today, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Food for thought.
And we see the threat the same way.
Yeah.
If it's a threat to our ego, is a threat to our physical well-being.
Oh, yeah. I've had like sleepless nights because I overthought something, because I compared myself on social media and Jessica was just like, Steph, you're never going to get there. I don't know why you're even trying. You're terrible. Like, what are you doing, Steph? She's so mean.
She is. She is. And comparison. It's the devil.
Yep.
We'll probably talk about that in our next episode.
Exactly.
So, like, I love the questions that you've had for me today. And I think it's really important to start just listening to yourself and recognizing, when is my ego in overdrive? Because as we've said, it's not a bad thing for it to show up, and we do need it and we need to rely on it in certain ways. But when it's taking over, then that's probably when things are feeling really hard, or you're feeling like you're really burnt out because things are taking longer. You're putting much more effort and energy into it than you probably need to. And that can be really hard to see for yourself. But when Jessica is showing up, I love it. Make a note. Maybe that's a journal prompt for you when you're having a time, or, you know, you're going through a really heavy period where your alter ego is like really, really vocal. What's happening? What are you really scared of? What's going on? Are you preparing for a presentation after not presenting in person for a long time?
Yeah.
Or are you about to make a big announcement about something that is changing in your business? You know, all these different things that stifle a lot of fear for us can be when that alter ego is going to show up for us. Or where are you complying, controlling, or protecting, and what's happening there? There's a big process that I'm not going to walk us through right now, but it's called immunity to change. And I do this with my clients often after we've done their leadership circle profile. We identify a key area that they want to work on, and then we do an immunity to change x-ray. And what this does is helps us really get down to what are those underlying assumptions and beliefs that are getting in the way of being more effective. And that can be what's kind of playing on the ego, or different things that are happening. So I had a client that I was working with. He's CEO of a company, like really well-respected, well-rounded leader, but wasn't really showing up in the way that he wanted to. And at the end of the day, when we went through this, his underlying assumption was that if I'm too bold, or if I speak out too much in meetings, that I'm going to be fired. And he didn't even realize it until we went through that whole practice together.
Wow.
So we have a lot of things deep down that until we start unraveling and kind of peeling the layers, we don't really know that they're there. But you can start paying attention to those things and saying, okay, what am I I say this is what I want to be like, but I'm not doing it. So what am I doing or not doing that's acting against who I truly want to be? And then what are the assumptions that I make that if I were to do those things, what might happen? Right? Like what's the worst thing? What am I committed to happening? Like there's so many layers. I'm not doing it the best justice right now. But it takes a deep dive, and we call it an X-ray because it really does like go right into yourself of, okay, maybe this is an assumption or a belief that you grew up with your whole life and you didn't know how it was getting in the way.
Interesting. I like what you said too about who do you want to be? Because especially in this day and age, especially with like the comparison and stuff like that, I look at other people and I'm like, that's how I should be. But how often do we actually look inwards and like who do we want to be? Like what, and that one kind of was like, oh, I need a journal prompt about this today, because it's true. I don't actually know what I want to be sometimes, but I know what other people are doing. I'm like, maybe that's how I should be. And then maybe that's the like ego part of it, that I'm like, I have to be like that in order to be successful, to achieve,
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Oh, yeah, we could go off on a tangent on this one. It's like, what's driving your desire to be like that person?
Yeah.
Or what makes you believe that that's what success is?
True. I don't know. They just have more clients than me, I guess. I don't know.
But do you know that for sure? In some cases.
In some cases.
Yeah.
And again, like when we talked about this on the highlight reel too, like they make it seem like everything's all hunky-dory and everything's fine. And then sure enough, I'll talk with like my fellow creatives and they'll be like, oh no, I just like had a really bad incident happen the other day. And I was like, okay, I feel a little bit better. Again, going back to even the imposter syndrome, like actually having those talks.
Yeah.
Brought down my like ego and feeling bad about myself, And then I was like, okay, is this really the success I want? No, like I want just to be happy. Like I want, my own fulfillment.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. I went through a practice with my coach this week, and it was an I want practice.
Ooh,
and she said, like, what do you want? And like the last thing that I said, and she loved it and I loved it. We were very excited. I was like, I want to be 100% myself.
Oh, I like that.
And that like brought tears to my eyes when I said that with her, because I was like, wow, like, okay. And now how do I do that? That's the next step. But often we are looking at what other people are doing or who they're being and all these things, and we're comparing. And then we start getting tripped up, or that fear of, okay, well, if I'm going to be successful, I need to do that or be that or wear that or whatever it might be in the moment. And then we're not being authentic anymore either.
Exactly.
Right? Like it's such a mind warp.
Yeah.
But that's life. That's what we're here for, I guess. Oof, she says. But yeah, I definitely encourage you to do the I want practice, right? Like if you sat down and wrote down I want, and finished it, or just said it out loud, sometimes that could be really powerful too. But what do you really want?
Yeah, and it might be good for our listeners to also try as well.
Yeah.
You haven't really defined what you want. And that's another thing too. Like a lot of our listeners have like families and people like sometimes we fit into what they want as well, and it's going back to yourself. Yes. And especially for self-care, again, we always got to bring it back to self-care. But if we take care of ourselves and realize where we are mentally, the bad side of the ego will be easier to not control, but manage. Yeah. Because like you said, a little bit of ego is not a bad thing.
Yeah, like your ego can serve you when you're taking care of yourself and when you're really clear and setting intentions on what you want.
Exactly.
I think that's what you were getting at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just have a better way of saying it. You're my words, girl. That's why.
Your words. I'm the words today.
You're the words.
Not always. But yeah, like if we think about your ego being your self-esteem and your self-importance, well, we know that when we practice self-care, we feel so much better about ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they definitely go hand in hand. Like, how do you have a strong positive ego, not good or bad.
Yeah.
But one that serves you, and one that, if your ego is something you need to draw on to make that bold move or pick up the phone and call that client or that prospect that you're trying to get, awesome. Pull it in. Let's do it. But if it's the one that's saying, don't call them, they're never going to talk to you, or that's not going to happen, go practice some self-care. Great way to flip it around.
That's true. And then name it.
Name it.
Name it.
Shut up, Jessica.
You need to name yours now.
We can make a drinking game out of this episode. How many times we say, Jessica, take a drink of your green tea.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Drink whatever you want.
Yeah.
I don't judge.
Oh my goodness. Like I said, I feel so bad for Jessica. So I feel again.
No, it's fine. They love it. It's like
Yeah.
we're special, making their name special.
That's true. We love you.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So I know you found an article about managing your ego or dropping your ego too.
Yeah,
Do you want to
thought
go
it was
through
a
those?
really cool one because
Yeah.
I've started to kind of implement some of them too since reading them. It's actually by the Huffington Post. And it's how to drop your ego with 5 techniques. And I thought it was a really cool article. We're not going to go through like the whole thing, but I kind of thought it'd be a good one to kind of go through of the steps. So
Sure.
the first one is practice forgiveness and letting go. And they even attached like a quote, which I thought was really cool. It's like, the weak can never forgive. Forgiveness is the attribute of the strong.
Ooh,
By Gandhi.
Yeah, of course.
Sometimes it's hard to like let go though. So people like me, it's hard to let go and to move forward with it too. Just kind of make peace with it.
But how great does it feel when you do?
It's good at the moment, but somehow it still comes back.
So you didn't really let it go.
Well,
you just put it down for a moment.
I feel like we need to do an episode about how to let go, because I will be like, bringing an expert at letting go, because I need that.
That's that's a great idea, actually. Or it's like maybe you even just need to give yourself permission to let go, because I find you maybe have even defined yourself as someone who doesn't.
That's true. I guess if you say that you are, how you kind of think that you are that way.
It's like we need to reprogram your brain.
Boop, 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 boop.
We're so special. But it is. It's like other things I've heard about like forgiveness, right? Is when you're holding on to something, it's not even impacting the other person. It's impacting you.
Yeah, it's the saying like they're living in your head rent free.
Yeah.
Saying, yeah.
Like nobody got time for that.
There's a lot of people up in my head.
Guess I'm gonna start paying rent.
Yeah, jeez. Okay, so that's one way. And then the second one is practice honesty and being open. And the quote is by Will Smith. Too many people spend money they haven't earned to buy things they don't want to impress people they don't like.
Wow.
Yeah, that is very, very true. If I had $1 for every time I'm like, oh, I need to go get some new clothes because I need to look Instagram pretty or Instagram ready.
Yeah.
Ooh, that would hurt.
It does. Well, I think back to when I first moved out west. And I wanted to show all those naysayers who said I would never survive out there and I'd be back so soon. So I'd come home with my fancy, expensive purses and like la la la. Like they probably didn't even know what they were. Yeah. So I'm like, who am I trying to prove
like,
this
do you
to?
know how much this was?
Like, hello. But that was totally my ego, right?
Yeah.
Like I was like, I'm going to prove to you that I'm just fine.
Exactly.
Meanwhile, my visa's maxed out, my line of credit maxed out, but I've got the dang purse.
And those people probably even forgot that they said that.
They didn't care.
They didn't care.
They didn't care. But I was hurt from it and I wanted to prove myself, right?
Exactly.
But yeah, like if I could just be honest and open and recognize that like this isn't what's going to make me happy. It took me a very long time to figure that out, by the way. It's just life. That's how we learn.
Exactly.
And learning to have my emotions.
And especially being honest about that. I like that they give extra points about practicing honesty and being open, but like the truth will set you free, and that suppressing our emotions can develop like depression and anxiety.
As she
I'm like,
laughs.
oh.
Yeah. Oh.
And it's true. I think that's why I think it's cool that there's more talks of being authentic and people being more vulnerable too,
Yeah.
which I think is kind of cool. Because it is, people are seeing that, hey, other people are just like me. And sometimes I think I talk too much about personal stuff on this podcast, but then we also have people that say that they really enjoy it and that they connect to the episodes, and that warms my heart too. So if we all could be just a little bit more open and honest, I feel like our egos will slowly start, because again, the story that we're telling ourselves is only half the story from the other person. The other person's probably not even thinking that.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. But yeah, we're so like, stick to the facts. Exactly. Stories are going to get us every time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
So the third one is to surrender your need for control. Oh.
Wow, are you sure you picked this article?
I did, because I was like, this feels so accurate, and then I'm like, oh, I'm calling my own self out. That's not good.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like what they said, like, we are not our egos, we are not our jobs, we are not our material possessions, and we are not our achievements.
So what are we?
What are we? Existential crisis right now.
Oh, right. Yeah. But it's true. It's, we need to find our identity outside of all of those things, which can be really hard. But I heard a quote the other day, which I loved again. And it was talking about control. And it was like, what is, I'm going to butcher it. What's the only thing better than having control, or better feeling than having control? And it's letting it go. So I'll figure out what exactly that was, but it's something along those lines, right? But you think like having this control feels so powerful and so mighty and great, but then to be able to just like drop it and let it go is so freeing.
Yeah.
And just like takes this huge weight off of you.
That is so true.
Yeah. So do what makes you happy.
Yeah. I'm just reading the extra part of it too. It's like, break the fears and trust life. Don't be scared to love. Take risks. Be curious. Explore. Do what makes you happy. And I guess that's what you're saying too, of like the letting go part. Try to do every day something that scares you, and you'll start to feel happiness in the small things. So that's kind of true.
Yeah, I like it.
Number 4 is enjoy silent moments with yourself. Might be hard for those Enneagram 1s and 2s. But yeah, I think... Although, for people like me, I feel like I have too much silent time, and that's when my Jessica comes out.
Yeah, so maybe you
that's
need to limit yours.
Maybe that's a not one for me. That doesn't work.
Maybe yours is connect with others.
Yeah.
Or go, talk to someone.
Talk to people so they can be like, Steph, you're being an idiot. Yeah. My mom is that for me.
Yeah. Yeah. But I love my silent time to myself. Yeah. I don't get it a lot. I get it more than I probably admit. Because I don't have kids or anything, right? So I'm like, busy. I always have a lot on the go, but I try to take a bit of time in the morning. And then most nights before bed, like Dave's usually at the studio. So I have the house to myself. And I got to remember to just like turn off the Netflix, put down the phone, and just be quiet. Doesn't always happen.
Moment of silence.
My moment of silence is like going for a run. Does that count?
Yeah. Well, it says like it even says in the article like to take 5 minutes every day to be with yourself in silence, because sometimes in silence you can find the answers that the voices never can. I guess that is true. Like when we did our meditation, and unfortunately I've kind of dropped meditation lately, but when I am meditating and you're not thinking, you find that peace, and like you're just breathing through things. Yeah. That you're not letting, like you're suppressing your ego in a sense, that you're just being. Yeah. Which I think is pretty impactful.
Yeah, definitely. I've also dropped meditation.
Have you? Oh, we need to do, we should get like an actual, like maybe season 3, we'll get a pro meditator on.
I don't know if I'll get convinced. I don't know. I read somewhere that meditation is not for everyone. So I was like, yes.
My scapegoat.
I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty excited about it.
Oh no.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm not writing it off completely yet, but
Are you? It sounds like you're like, oh gosh. I remember like when I was a kid on diets, which don't do diets, people.
No,
but like
they're
I would always
terrible.
be like, I'm pretty sure having dark chocolate's good. Writes the See, the article says the dark chocolate's good.
You can find an argument for anything on the internet.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, did Julianne go? Is meditation really?
I'm gonna find. I can't remember where I even saw it. Maybe I made it up. Could have been a dream.
Oh man, that's
Willing to have a
amazing.
conversation with anyone who disagrees with me.
Yeah, exactly. We'll have to have a conversation about that later. Oh man. And the fifth one is to practice gratitude. That one I feel like is good for, and like anytime you're over ego, feeling sad, depressed, sometimes just writing a gratitude list is the easiest way. I find that my gratitude list is always kind of the same, but it's always nice to be reminded
Absolutely.
of how great things are.
Yeah, and you see more of what you look for too.
Exactly.
Right? So if you're looking for things to be grateful for, you're going to see more things that you're grateful for.
Exactly.
And I had a post earlier this week about journal prompts. And one of them was about writing about gratitude. And someone posted or commented and said that she does it quite often, but she actually notices if she takes a few days off from her gratitude list, she notices a huge difference in her mental well-being.
Really?
Yeah.
That's kind of interesting.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, so like it doesn't even take 5 minutes really to list 5 things that you're grateful for, whether you write it in your journal or just say it out loud or in your head. Yeah.
Interesting.
I like it. I do it almost every day. Pretty much anytime that I journal, I'll write 5 things at the bottom.
That's amazing. Yeah, I need to start going back into that. That's my meditation. I do like the quote that they have on here too, that it's not happy people who are thankful, it's thankful people who are happy. And yeah, it is true. Like take 5 minutes every day to think about all the people, experiences, lessons, and mistakes you are thankful for. Ooh, that's a good one. Mistakes. We sometimes aren't thankful for the times that things didn't go
or
right
as planned.
or as planned. Yeah.
Maybe it was exactly what it needed to be. It just wasn't what we were expecting.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. No, that's a great list. I think they're easy things. Well, mostly easy, I guess. Maybe not forgiving and letting go of control. You'll get there.
I'll get there, my
You'll
friend.
get there. But yeah, when you find that the ego is really taking over, there's just some quick things that we can do to switch it. It's kind of like what we talk in conscious leadership too, with shift moves to get from below the line to above the line, right? So these are some of the things that would work for that too. Sometimes just taking a moment and taking some deep breaths is enough to switch us.
So you mean like meditation?
No, I mean breaths.
Just breaths. I know. I'm just
I know.
being feisty.
I like our banter. Hopefully others do too.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Okay. That is true. And then especially when you need to really think about what you're talking about in your head or what you're thinking in your head. And like, yeah. I don't know where I was going.
I don't know either. Is Jessica taking over in your head now?
Yeah, just because, like, shut up, Steph. You sound so stupid.
You don't. You don't.
Get it, Jessica.
Yeah. No, but I think lesson from this. So the ego has its place, right? Is what we're learning, and that if we can be in control and not let the ego be in control, then we can use it and leverage it where we need to. But there's also a time and place to be vulnerable and to be, you could be authentic and hone your ego at the same time, I think, to a certain extent. But knowing what you want to be, I think that's going to be a great practice for everyone.
Yeah.
After this episode is just until you can't think of anything else, maybe like I want blank, I want blank, I want blank, and then that'll get you to like some clear vision of what you really want or what's the intention for the life that you want to live. And then there's no place for the ego to dismantle all of that.
Exactly. And don't think that it's being selfish to think about what you want either.
No,
Yeah.
100% need to do that.
Exactly.
Regardless of what your responsibilities are for work and home and community, if you aren't taking care of yourself, as we always say, you know, self-care is really important. And this is like a form of that, right? Like for you to know what you want and going after it, then you can be you. Otherwise, all the self-care in the world isn't going to help if you're just trying to achieve what other people are placing on you. So
Exactly. So true.
Preach.
Preach.
Yeah, cool. So what do you think about your ego now, Stephanie?
We got a lot to work on, but and that's I will say just I feel like a lot of people that do have mental health disorders, it is harder because it's very heightened, you know. But I think it's realizing where you are that can be super impactful, and again, who you want to be. And I know I'm definitely going to be creating a list and really thinking where I am, and I'm still going to continue using Jessica because I do think sometimes she makes a good point. And sometimes I do get protected from it too.
Yeah. And you get to choose when you listen to her or not.
Exactly. But it's realizing when and when not. It's not in order, so.
Yeah. And even just say like, oh, hey, Jessica, there you are.
Yeah.
Right? So you're recognizing that she's there.
Acknowledgement.
Maybe even accepting yourself for being scared.
Exactly.
And for her showing up.
Exactly.
That might be all you need to do right now.
Exactly.
Right? It's not going to overhaul overnight. And I think sometimes when there's things like this that we want to maybe change about ourselves, we expect to be able to just do it, or we get impatient.
Beep, boop, beep.
Right? Where's the buttons
Where's
that
the
I press?
button?
How do I just fix this?
Reset.
And maybe it's not something that needs to be fixed. Maybe
Yeah.
it's just an awareness that you needed to gain about it.
Exactly. And yeah, we'd love to pass it off to you guys too. What do you guys think? Do you find that your ego kind of plays? Do you name your ego too, or is this just like something I do? I don't really know.
I would love to hear
I would
the
love
names
to
of your
hear.
egos.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I guess another episode's done.
I'm always so sad when it's over.
I know, this actually wasn't as down as I thought it was going to be. I'm actually
Yeah.
feeling really hopeful and excited. So.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I hope that's the same for you guys too. So
It's never a bad day when you learn something about yourself.
exactly.
Maybe that's the coach in me, but I do believe that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well,
All right.
until next time.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Thriving Tides. Hit the subscribe button to never miss an episode.
Follow us, Thriving Tides, on Facebook, Instagram, and now YouTube to stay connected. And remember, don't fight the rip currents.